If you're doing X and you're getting a certain output and you do X again, you're going to get the same output. Welcome to Life of a CISO. I'm Dr. Eric Cole, your host, and we'll be taking you on a journey each week on what it takes to be a CISO and what are solutions that you can implement today if you are currently a Chief Information Security Officer or if you want to be one in the future. This is Life of a CISO. Welcome to one of my favorite times of the week, my Life of a CISO podcast with yours truly, Dr. Eric Cole, where we get to go in and talk about cybersecurity strategy and what it means to be a Chief Information Security Officer. And if you've been following our podcast, the last episode, I started off giving my background and life lessons and sort of how I got on that journey to become a Chief Information Security Officer, cybersecurity strategist, and essentially to get my purpose in life, which was to make cyberspace a safe place to live, work, and raise a family. So in part one, I took you through my time at the CIA. And when I left the CIA, I realized two things. One, that offense is boring, right? You always get in because any functional system has to have vulnerabilities. Just like the law of gravity, that is the law of security that says the only way you can achieve 100% security is zero functionality. So as soon as you add in functionality, you are decreasing your security and increasing your overall risk. So I switched to the defensive side, which is really part of that purpose is to make cyberspace safe, right? I didn't say to hack cyberspace and to show all the exposures in cyberspace, right? It's to end suffering in cyberspace by making it a safe place to live, work, and raise a family, which is all about the defense. The second thing I learned working for the government, and I love working for the government, it was an honor that they actually hired me and I was able to work and serve our country. But I also learned I don't really like bureaucracy and working for others, right? So from there, I went in and they're sort of parallel path. So I started going in and being Chief Information Security Officers for various telecommunication and other organizations, research groups and telecoms. I was a CISO before they called it a CISO, right? So when I go in and say, I've been a Chief Information Security Officer, I've been a Chief Information Security Officer. I remember learning all the hard lessons of sitting in front of the board, thinking that talking about switches, routers, and firewalls is what they wanted to hear. And you saw them rolling their eyes. And I remember one of the most humbling experiences when I was at a large multi-billion-dollar research organization as the CISO. After the first briefing, I left and I said, okay, so the next quarterly meeting is in 3 months, and I just want to confirm the date is March 15th. And I remember the president walked me out and said, Eric, you don't need to put that date on your calendar. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, you don't need to come to these meetings anymore. And I was sort of like, okay, so I pushed a little bit. I'm like, so I'll be honest with me, man. What's going on? He's like, Eric, you're no longer invited. They didn't find it of useful at all. It had zero usefulness. And essentially, you was talking techie and they didn't understand your language. So I looked at Saul and I said, can I ask you two favors? And he sort of, okay. I said, one, can you ask them to reconsider? And I only want 10 minutes at the next meeting and I want to prove myself. And then I said, Saul, I know what you're thinking. Eric, what are you going to do differently? And I said, that's where the second favor comes in. Can you go in and help me understand business and mentor me just from a general business standpoint so I can present cybersecurity from a business-centric standpoint? And he said, okay. He goes, but you have to listen to me. I said, deal. And we shook on it. Right. So I learned early on the importance of understanding the business and adapting it to the business. And that's when I actually started building out that methodology that all they care about is what is the risk to the business, non-technical, the risk to the business, what is the likelihood of occurring, cost if it occurs, and cost to fix it. That's all business folks care about. That's what I was taught, right? That's the only thing that matters. So I've been there, done that. I have the wounds, the scars, right? The embarrassment and everything else that goes with it. But once again, I've learned that if you make a mistake, ask for a second chance. And here's the most important part. Ask for help to do it differently. I know a lot of people that go in and ask for second chances. The problem? They do the same thing they did the first time. Well, guess what? If you're doing X and you're getting a certain output and you do X again, you're going to get the same output, right? If you keep doing the same thing, you keep going to get the same results, right? I don't know who coined it. I know they give Einstein credit. I'm not sure if he did or didn't come up with this, but I love it. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And so many people ask for second, third, or fourth chances, but they keep doing the same things over. Ask for help. If you weren't able to do it the first time, you don't have that capability. Now, you could learn from others, but you need to expand, get mentoring, and get help so you can do it differently and try again. And I remember at one of those organizations, the research organization where I was the chief information security officer, somebody in IT came up to me and said, Eric, I got this email about this SANS organization from this gentleman, Stephen Northcutt, and they're starting up this new project called the Level 1 Notebook. And I could just, if Steven's listening to this, I could just see him smiling, right? The good old Level 1 Notebook, right? From 1999, 2000 time period. And it was a brilliant effort. Steven, I'm sure many of you know him, a brilliant mind. I mean, he's always coming up with new ideas, new methods, new techniques. I mean, such a great service to the cybersecurity community. And he had this idea for this Level 1 Notebook of essentially documenting, putting together these different exploits and how they work and how they operate. And that's essentially a lot of what I was doing. I was sort of categorizing and doing a taxonomy of attacks and how they work and how they operate. And I was actually working on a DARPA research project where we were actually building out a behavioral analytics system that was way before its time, right? Way early, but there was essentially doing all that. So I went in and replied to that email, and essentially I showed Stephen what I was doing, and I said, hey, what is your framework? He's like, I don't know. I just had this idea, and I'm not sure how to do it. So I said, okay, here's how I think we should do it. What is the threat? What is the risk? What is the exposure? And then what is the fix? What is the remediation? And what is the overall risk rating? So I came up with this basically template of approximately 8 different slides, and I said, here's how I think we should put it together. And he said, that's awesome. And I put together some samples for him, and just showing you what a great, amazing person he is. This was back before there were microphones and recording studios, and right, I had all this great stuff there. So Stephen's like, hey, Eric, why don't you come to my house, have some dinner, and we can record some of these and start putting out some of this content. All right, so I went out there, met with him, and once again, long story short, that got me started to do this project. And Stephen said, hey, why don't you come to New Orleans for the next SANS conference? Right, this was 2000, I believe. And he said, just observe and see what's going on, and maybe you can give a little presentation here or there, but why don't you come and see what the organization is doing? And I still remember I was sitting there next to Steve Christie, who came up with he was with MITRE and the CVE. We were in this gigantic room of probably 2,000 people, and we're listening to Alan Paller talk about cybersecurity and where things are going. And about 10 minutes into the presentation, just want to take a quick break. I hope you're enjoying the show. I have this free webinar that I would love for you to check out if you want to become a world-class CISO. I see Stephen Northcutt, and he's a big, tall, and tons of energy, and he starts sort of running up and down the side aisle. And you can't but not notice him. So I look over, and we make eye contact, and he sort of goes like this. I'm like, am I being kicked out? I didn't do anything wrong, I promise. Right? So I'm in the middle, so I sort of get up quietly and go out. And Stephen comes up to me and says, hey, Eric, have you ever done any work with firewalls and configuration? I'm like, yeah, we just got done deploying a big project, right, with the Gauntlet firewalls, and we had dual firewalls with Cisco's. And I say, he goes, no, stop, that's perfect. He goes, did you ever think of teaching? And I'm like, yeah, I like helping people. I love explaining complex topics. I'm always told that I'm good at doing analogies. He's like, you want to teach? And I'm like, sure. And he goes, great. Char Sample missed her flight, and tomorrow she's supposed to present on firewalls to 400 people, and you're up. I'm like, whoa. You didn't say in 17 hours, right? You said I want to teach at some point in the future, right? And he's like, dude, opportunity is yours if you want it. He goes, we'll go over everything. We'll go with the slides. We'll do that. Once again, opportunity knocks. And here's one of my favorite phrases. I found in my life, the harder I work and the more I put myself out there, the luckier I get, right? So people always like, wow, that was so lucky that you had that opportunity. No, fast track. I had to reply to an email. I had to put in a lot of work to put the template. I wasn't getting paid for any of that previous stuff. All that level 1 notebook was all volunteering because I felt it was the right thing to do. So I put in at least 40, 50 plus hours on that, basically because I believed in Steven. I believed in what they were doing. I wanted to help and make a difference in the world. So that's the other important thing. Give before you ask back. I know so many people I hear today where they want to get into cybersecurity. And I give them all these different opportunities. And they're like, Eric, but they're not going to pay me enough. Or they're not going to pay me what I'm worth. Or they're not even going to pay me. Who cares? If you're getting experience, get the experience and the money will always follow. One of the things I've learned in my career is there's only 2 things that I really, really regret. And both of them is when I made purely monetary decisions. I knew in my heart it wasn't the right thing to do. I knew that it wasn't something I was going to enjoy, but because the money was so good, I did it for the money. And those are the only times I regret. Don't do it for the money. Do it because you believe and trust in what you're doing. So I show up the next day, and a couple of funny things. First, I don't like cocktail parties, like where you have to go one-on-one and mingle, like parties that most people love. I don't like that. I don't know why. It just makes me feel uncomfortable. Like when we have to go to a party, I'm like, oh, because I mean, you got to meet different people and work and crowd. I mean, I know how to do that, but I don't necessarily enjoy it. However, when I got up in front of that room of 300 people and it was go time, I don't remember being so calm, focused, and relaxed. And I just started going. And I just started sharing my experience and my knowledge and my expertise. And the next thing I knew, it was 5 o'clock. So it's one of those bizarre things where most people love parties and hate public speaking. I'm the opposite. Not a big fan of parties, but I love the public speaking. And a couple things with that. Steven and I still joke about that first time today because there were 2 interesting factors. One, I got up there and I said, hello, I'm Eric Colin. How you doing today? I'm so excited to be talking about firewalls with you. I mean, firewalls are one of the most fundamental components of security. Let me go in and break down what the number 1 rule of firewalls is. All connections must go through the firewall. And what we mean by that is they can't have wireless. They can't have anything that goes. And literally that way, Stephen was like, how are you breathing? I like went that way for like 90 minutes until because I get excited. New Yorker, talked a little fast, right? You might even think I'm a little fast today, but I've slowed down, right, a lot. So that was the first thing that Stephen laughed about. But the funniest thing was there were these slides in the presentation, which I kid you not, all they said were the Chicago story. There were no notes. There were no details. And remember, this was somebody else's slide deck who missed their flight. So we couldn't reprint or we couldn't change. So essentially, Steven just said, hey, Eric, the audience will understand. Just skip over those slides. And I'm like, They paid money. I'm delivering. So I would find a story that was relevant that I could tie to Chicago. And I said, okay, so the one time I was in Chicago working with this client, and Steve was like, how'd you do that, right? So you just sort of go with the flow. But the point is, be yourself. What I find happens when I'm training a lot, and I've trained a lot of speakers over the year, they try to pretend to be somebody else. They're like, oh, Eric, I'm going to tell your story or do this or do that. That's not authentic. Be you. If you have a little quirk, do your little quirk, right? If you go in and you talk a little fast, talk a little fast. But the problem is, if you're being authentic and genuine and true, you're really there to help them, that's what they'll see. But if the whole time you're like, I need to talk slower, and I need to tell a joke, and game over, right? So that was sort of the other thing that I learned, is that you need to go and just sort of be authentic, be yourself, and put yourself out there. Volunteer, be the voice, help others, and trust me, the opportunities will come out. And then I had the opportunity with SANS to actually create several courses, but one of them, Security Essentials, their #1 best-selling course for over 15 years when I was in charge of that. I also wrote several of their other top 10 courses, trained thousands upon thousands of people. Many of their instructors that are teaching the courses today, I mentored, I trained up, and many of them even still use a lot of my stories, which is, to me, a privilege and an honor. So that was sort of one track that sort of parallels a 15-plus year interval where I was doing that, teaching anywhere from 1 to 3 times a month. But one of my big things is that if I'm going to be up in front teaching, I need to be a practicing network professional. I need to have real stories. I need to be out there in the trenches. Once again, nothing against folks that teach full time. That was just sort of my personal conviction. So I had a career track where I was building and selling companies and helping organizations implement effective security, and then taking all of that information, knowledge, and expertise and putting that directly into the classroom. Also, around that time, I know 2000, that time period was huge, right? That's when I first started with SANS, had my first opportunity. That's also when I wrote my first book, which Hackers Beware. But once again, funny story with that. Back in 2000, hackers wasn't in the dictionary, the autocorrect. So I'm giving a keynote, and the word autocorrected from hackers to, hello, this is Dr. Eric Cole. Please welcome to the stage one of the folks that has built and implemented a lot in cybersecurity, and his new book, Hookers Beware. And I'm looking as I'm coming on stage, and I'm like, did he just say that, the person who introduced me? And I sort of get on stage, and they didn't catch it because they're just reading, right? They're MCs, they're just doing that. And I sort of look at the audience, and I'm like, just to set the record straight, as fun as that would have been, my first book was actually Hackers Beware, and not Hookers Beware, right? And the audience got a good laugh at it, and we sort of moved on. So yes, you want to make sure you always check speeches before you say them, because otherwise it could be a little embarrassing there. So that was fun. But that was my first book, Hackers Beware. And also, right around 2000, one of the most critical and important events in my life, my first son was born, right? My first child. So that was sort of an awesome year where there's just tons of energy and lots of great things going on. I also, around that time frame, joined an organization, TSGI, where I actually was the chief technology officer responsible for all their research, intellectual property, and patents. And I helped them build up that company. And we ended up selling that company to Lockheed Martin. So that was sort of one of my first acquisitions. Most of the time when you sell a company, the executives sort of are asked to leave or given a buyout on that. So with me, great package, great organization, all the other C's, right? COO, CFO, everyone else sort of no longer was there. But the president at the time and CEO of Lockheed Martin, Bob Stevens, he called me in and said, hey, Eric, we'd like you to really focus in on cybersecurity across all of our programs. So he made me a chief scientist, and I essentially was responsible for the cybersecurity across all those different programs. So when there were incidents or breaches or things happened, I was the one that got the phone call, basically jumped on a plane and went to handle it. Totally loved it, right? Got woken up many times at 2 a.m, but totally, right? If you love what you do, it doesn't matter, right? That's how you know if you found your purpose in life. You know you found your purpose in life for a couple of reasons. One, when you wake up in the morning, you're excited. When you wake up in the morning, you jump out of bed. Second, if you don't get a lot of sleep, you're still happy. If somebody wakes you up at 2 a.m., you're still excited. Now, don't get me wrong. I still get tired in the evenings, right? But I'm not upset. I'm not angry. I give 100% every single day. And when I come home to see my family, I love seeing my family, and I get a really good night's sleep. But I'm always happy when I go to bed, and I'm super excited when I wake up in the morning. That's how you know you found your purpose. If you're sitting there and you wake up in the morning, oh, crap, another day. Or you wake up in the morning, you're like, is today the day I kill my boss and I get put in jail, right? That's not your purpose, right? Or you're not working for the right folks, right? But your purpose, remember, is the thing that you love to do, that you do with the least amount of effort better than anyone else. 3 requirements. If it's something that you truly enjoy, but you're not good at, that's a passion, not a purpose. If it's something that you're good at, but you don't really enjoy, it's not your purpose, right? We see this all the time, where you see these extremely talented individuals that make it to professional sports, and after 3 or 4 years, they leave. They had something, they had a God-given ability. They had something that they did better than anybody else with the least amount of effort, but they didn't enjoy it. And that's when you see them leave after a couple of years and they move on to something else because that wasn't their purpose. You're going to have a lot of talent, but remember, the purpose are 3 things. Something you enjoy and love to do with the least amount of effort, better than anyone else. And to me, every one of us was given a purpose. So keep on looking for that purpose. So Lockheed Martin was great. I probably, to be honest with you, would have stayed another year or 2. But then Dave DeWalt, the CEO of McAfee, contacted me, and I joined McAfee as CTO to reposition their technology and intellectual property. Once again, no secret, but in the late 2000, like 2007, 2008, McAfee was losing market share. They was getting beat pretty bad by some of the competition, and some of their customers weren't buying the products that they did. So I went in and spent a lot of time understanding what are the problems and challenges with the customers, what are the things that they really need. We revamped, redesigned the product line. We essentially had a 5-year plan to revamp and sell. We did it in 3. And McAfee sold to Intel for, I forget the exact number now, a couple of bill. In that case, I did take the buyout, right? I did say, okay, it's sort of time. And during all this, remember, I was still teaching for SANS. I was still writing books. I was still giving keynotes and presenting and doing all of that. And then I decided that, hey, you know something? I got at least one more in me. So I started my company, Secure Anchor, right? Where we're now going in and we're focusing really on training up Chief Information Security Officer, strategy, security roadmap, security assessments, and doing expert witness work. So that's sort of my sort of history of how we got to where we are today. But a couple of things I want to put out there. First, and most important, whether you think you can or think you can't, you're probably right. You are going to be your biggest enemy to success. And I see this all the time. When I go in and I train people, I am a huge fan of diversity. That's actually one of the reasons I really like security, because it's such a diverse background set. If you're an accountant, pretty much everyone around you is an accountant. If you're a lawyer, everyone around you a lawyer, right? Very similar people. In cybersecurity, because you got to be creative, I work with auto mechanics that are now in cybersecurity. I work with beauticians. I work with airplane pilots. I've had some attorneys, right? You name it, right? Cybersecurity welcomes all, because if you have a creativity and you want to solve complex problems, that's really what cybersecurity is all about. So it's always that diversity, and I encourage it, because I'll be honest with you. If I had to work with 10 Erics, I'd jump off the building. I'm crazy. Right? I would drive myself nuts. Like if there were 2 or 3 of me that I had to deal with on a regular basis, are you kidding? I mean, it'd be nuts. I tell my staff all the time, thank you so much. I don't know how you put up with me, right? Day after day. A little crazy, but self-aware, right? Self-awareness is good. So I'm really big on that. But when I go in and I talk to a lot of diverse groups, it's not, in my experience, I know everyone has different experiences. In my experience, it's not that the companies won't hire you. It's that you're already going in defeated. Every time I coach or talk to folks, they're like, Eric, no one's going to hire me. No one wants me. I'm not CISO material. I have no experience, right? There's no reason they're going to hire me. And you know something? If you go into a job interview and they actually offer you the job, you should run away from it, because they're nuts. Who would hire somebody that doesn't believe in themselves? Right? Who would hire somebody who doesn't think they have the skill set that's needed to do that? So first and foremost, believe in yourself. You have more capability than you realize. Put yourself out there. Remember, the more you do for others, the more you volunteer, and the more you're front and center for opportunities, you will get very, very lucky. I don't know anybody who's lucky who sits on a couch and never puts themselves out there. People that take chances, people that are risky, are the ones that are very, very lucky. The other thing I often say is luck is what lazy people use to explain the success of people that work hard. So put yourself out there. Believe in yourself. You are absolutely Chief Information Security Officer or a security engineer or whatever it is you want to be. Believe it, own it, walk in with that confidence. Next, go in and make yourself visible. Volunteer. Show up. And something else. Don't be afraid of failure. Failure is how you grow. Failure is how you get better. Failure is how you get to that next level. And then something else I truly, truly believe in is constant learning. If you are not reading a book a week, you're giving yourself an unfair advantage. Average person reads half a book a year. So if you're reading 52 books a year, think of how much farther ahead you are from a knowledge standpoint. Oh, but Eric, I don't have the time. Now, I'll be honest with you. For the longest time period, I always thought that was me. I'm like, if I only had 26 hours in a day. And here's what I realized. It's not the amount of time, it's the efficiency. I can often, when I'm focused and aligned, and people call it different things. They call it in flow state. They call it in the zone. They call it in a powerful state. Essentially what it is, no distractions, where you are dialed in, focus, and believe you're doing your purpose. And I can get things done in 30 or 45 minutes that you would have thought would have taken 3 or 4 hours. So don't ever say you don't have time. You're not using the time you have wisely. I can guarantee that if I spend 3 days with you, I could find at least 3 hours a day of inefficient time that you could better use. You only have to read for 45 minutes or an hour. You don't have to read for 3 hours. Now, yes, you do need to relax. You do need to do all those things. But to me, reading and learning is something critical. My non-negotiables, every single day, I exercise. Every single day, I journal. Every single day, I read. and there's a few others, but those are sort of my core. And I love people always ask me, they're like, Eric, what about on your birthday? Did I say every single day? Right? Every single day. On my birthday, I exercise. On my birthday, I read. On my birthday, I journal. But Eric, what about holidays? I'm sorry, did I say every single day? On holidays, I exercise. On vacation, I exercise. On vacation, I read. On vacation, I journal, right? So you got to start getting habits that really serve you. Is watching TV really serving you, right? Is going in and doing whatever it is you do on social media really serving you? Is watching the news for 45 minutes or 60 minutes a night really serving? Oh, but Eric, I need to know what's going on in the world. Trust me, if there's something big enough going on in the world, you'll find out from other people. I've done this experiment. Whenever I watch the news, I am always down, depressed, and low energy. And whenever I go 3 or 4 days without watching the news or social media, I'm happy, right? It's a funny thing, right? So experiment, test, believe in yourself. I hope this 2-part series really gave you some insight into how I got to where I am. Once again, everyone needs to carve their own path. Everyone needs to go in and follow their own direction. But hopefully, from my story, you got some takeaways, you got some lessons learned, and most importantly, I was an example in some cases of what not to do so you could avoid those pitfalls. Once again, I'd love to hear from you. Please drop a comment below. Also, pick up a copy of my new book, Cyber Crisis. It's getting great reviews. It's really written in a way that anybody can understand. But Eric, I'm technical. You should read it because it shows you how to talk to executives. So it's written in a language. I work with a lot of CEOs and COOs. So it's written in a language they understand. So it's perfect for business leaders and executives, and also perfect for security folks to understand the language of executives. Until next time, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Life of a CISO.